Senior, how come I feel like these paper mannequins are looking at us? Hisan grabbed hold of the wooden door, refusing to step into the room. I'm not kidding. Something must be wrong with them. Could it be that they're all living people playing dress-up FCK? I have a feeling they're all going to move soon enough. The paper mannequins that had been touched up by Chen Ji using mortician's makeup had something weird about them. They were obviously inanimate objects, but there was a certain liveliness to them. Gao Rushui glared angrily at Hisan. She thought to herself, why did I bring him with me today? Fear is contagious. I was not so afraid to begin with, but because of him, even I feel slightly affected. Do you mind keeping your opinions to yourself? If you give any more useless observations like that, I'm just going to leave you here. She was the first to step into the room to take a cursory look around. The windows in the main house were just decorative, they did not lead outside. Senior, let's go. This building is heavy with yin energy, and the place is sealed. The exit is definitely not here. The owner of this haunted house is a master manipulator who knows how human psychology works, so we have to act the complete opposite of how a normal people would. A place like this that does not seem to harbor the exit is exactly where we need to examine closer. Gao Rushui walked around the room, sending up wafts of air that caused some of the paper mannequins that had toppled to the floor to scrape unnaturally. Hisan's heart was at his throat, still standing outside the door. But there's no hiding place in this room, you can see every surface. Where can the exit possibly be hidden? No hiding place. Who told you that? Gao Rushui stopped at the middle of the room, raised her fair leg to step on the red coffin. Come help me, we're opening this coffin. Open that thing. Hisan's white lips were quivering. Isn't that a bit too disrespectful? You plan to spend the rest of your life in this haunted house. Under constant urging from Gao Rushui, Hisan moved inch by inch deeper into the room. He made sure to stay far away from the paper mannequins. He bent over to grab one side of the coffin's lid. On the count of 3, pull. Okay. 1, 2. Dong. Gao Rushui was only halfway through the countdown when there was a loud noise in the room. What was that? Hisan's soul practically jumped out of his skin. Shush. Gao Rushui put her finger to her lips to have him quiet down. She looked around before her gaze eventually fell on the red coffin before her. The sound seems to have come from inside the coffin. When she said so, color drained from Hisan's face. His Adam's apple trembled unevenly, and his hands, which were holding the coffin lid, were shaking like he was holding a hot iron brand. Senior, I beg of you, there's nothing here, can we go now? Calm down, the sound only occurred when we planned to open the lid, don't you think that's very strange? Senior, the coffin just made a sound, that's a hell of a lot more than strange. Hisan's fear was greatly amplified by Black Friday. At that moment, he just wanted to leave as soon as possible. Think about it, there are only 2 reasons that a coffin could make a sound. 1, there's a worker hiding in it waiting to scare us when we open the coffin. 2, there's a hidden machine set up inside it and activating it will cause some changes to this Mingun scenario. So, no matter which possibility it is, this coffin is crucial to this scenario. If we wish to escape, we have to open this coffin. Gao Rushui slapped the lid twice, adding, don't hesitate, just pull it open. Even though I have no idea what you just said, it did sound quite logical. Hisan and Gao Rushui applied their strength at the same time, and the heavy coffin lid started to slide. When the coffin was a quarter of the way open, the ancient-looking coffin suddenly exploded with a loud bang without warning. Innumerable paper mannequins and paper money shot out from within the coffin, and a strange woman's laugh filled the room. At that moment, the main house door started to close on its own. Let's go before it's too late. Hisan did not hesitate. He was close to the entrance, and in his hurry to escape, he had forgotten completely about his senior. He dashed to the door in several steps, but before he could jump through the door, the face of a woman flew in front of him. It was a death visage that was pale, exquisite, and breathtakingly beautiful. FCK. Hisan's first reaction was to raise his arm to punch at the face. However, the owner of said face seemed to have predicted his reaction because it easily swiveled away from his assault. Ghost. Help. Hisan collapsed to the floor and half crawled, half ran in a random direction. Hisan. Don't sprint around aimlessly. Gao Rushui yelled at the top of her lungs when she saw a red shadow follow Hisan into the building he chose to hide in. The side houses are for the sons and daughters. This is bad, the place Hisan has gone into was the living area for the specter before she died. Gao Rushui rushed outward, but she realized the door had locked. She banged on the wooden door cursing, divide and conquer. Isn't this just a haunted house attraction? Is it really necessary to do such a sick thing? The coffin had broken in pieces, and the paper mannequins littered the floor. Gao Rushui, who was trapped, had completely lost her collected composure. She punched and kicked at the door and finally got it to open 1 minute later. However, in that 1 minute, everything outside the main house seemed to have changed. Xiao-san. He-san. Gao Rushui shouted twice, but there was no answer. Other than the eerie background music, there was only the shuffling sound of paper money brushing against each other as her reply. What's going on? The haunted house is only so big, so it is impossible for He-san not to have heard me, or did some accident befall him? For a reason Gao Rushui couldn't explain, an image of a crime scene flashed across her mind. She trailed down the corridor and found her way to the West House by tracing her memory. Xiao-san ran in this direction earlier. As the old wooden door creaked open, the celebratory calligraphy written on white paper fluttered to the ground. Gao Rushui stepped into the room. The room was decorated as a newlywed room, but instead of red, the color of celebration, all the decorations were white, the Chinese funereal color. It was creepy to say the least. Where has he run off to? The atmosphere in the room was off. The only light source was the white lantern hanging outside the door. Gao Rushui stepped slowly forward as cold drafts blew in from behind her. Her exposed skin was chilled like there were small invisible hands in the air caressing her skin. The paper money crunched under her feet, and occasionally, she would kick something hard that she could not tell the identity of because it was too dark. She gritted her teeth and powered on. Gao Rushui pulled the drapes in the room open to let some of the light in. The place was empty other than a bed that was covered underneath a mosquito net as well as a set of bronze mirrors that sat facing each other next to the wall. I saw He-san run into this room with my own 2 eyes. Only 1 or 2 minutes have passed since then, so he could not have disappeared so soon. Unless, the exit is in this room and He-san accidentally stumbled across it. Gao Rushui took a deep breath before deciding to perform a closer examination of the room. However, as she took the first step, she heard a second set of footsteps falling closely behind hers. Who's behind me? She whipped around, but she only saw a bronze mirror and her reflection in the mirror itself. Phew, scared myself for no reason. Gao Ruxu's chest rose unevenly as her heart beat at an impossible speed. It had been such a long time since she had acted such a fool. The creepy music continued to play. Using the weak light, she could see the pupils of her reflection in the mirror start to shrink. In the mirror, the mosquito net behind her was opening on its own. The face of a paper mannequin showed itself, and from the reflection in the mirror, she could clearly see that it was smiling at her. Who's there? A human being's normal go-to reaction during extreme fear was anger and aggression. Gao Rushui turned around, but there was nothing there. She ran toward the mosquito net to yank it open to take a look at what was really behind it. However, the design of the net was more complicated than she expected. It had many different layers, and the netting was connected to the bed itself. Instead of untangling the net, Gao Rushui got herself stuck in the netting instead. Right then, she could hear footsteps coming from inside the room. I'm not moving, so whose footsteps are those? The disappearance of her junior combined with the effect of Black Friday had completely shattered Gao Ruxu's psychology defense. The sound of the unknown footsteps was the last straw that ultimately broke the camel's back. Her legs turned to jelly, and she found herself unable to move. Fear was like an uncaged animal, tearing at her sense of rationality. Gao Rushui yanked on the netting, trying her best to untangle herself from it, but it was to no avail. The sound of footsteps became suspiciously close. Impossible. The room is only so big, if someone was coming near, I'd definitely be able to see it. Her heart was a chaotic mess, to the extent that even the simple decorations inside the room were sending chills down her spine. The white lantern outside the window swayed in the wind, causing the light in the room to dim. Her reflection in the bronze mirror started to blur. Gao Ruxu's pupil shook because she realized the reflection in the mirror was no longer herself but a strange woman in a wedding dress. In more ways than one, the woman's appearance seemed like she was dressed to kill. Her beauty had an ethereal quality to it. It was frighteningly captivating, like looking at a recently unearthed piece of art. Staring at the woman in the mirror, Gao Ruxu's lips quivered, and fear appeared on her face for the first time. From her experience dealing with so many autopsies, she was familiar with the feeling the woman in the mirror was giving her. This was the face of a dead person. The haunted house is hiding a real dead body. Just as this thought entered her mind, fear swallowed her like a giant wave. She tried her best to run away from the bronze mirror, and as she staggered back, she knocked into something. At the same time, the sound of footsteps stopped, and Gao Ruxu's mind went completely blank in that moment. Having lost the ability to think, she turned instinctively to look behind her. Meeting her gaze was a woman in dead man's makeup and wedding dress. She smiled at her. Ah. The piercing scream shattered the quietness of the haunted house. It could hurt even outside the building itself. With her arms still entangled in the netting, Gao Ruxiu's legs finally gave, and she collapsed to the ground. The suppressed fear manifested as tears, which fell uncontrollably. Her eyes were screwed shut, and her mouth was slightly open. The woman started to dry heave. Xiao Wan, quickly bring her out. Okay. The female ghost standing before Gao Rushui removed her Bluetooth earpieces that were hidden under her hair and squatted down to say, "The experience ends here. Please catch your breath, I'll lead you out now." 10 seconds later, the exit to the Mingun scenario was pushed open. Chen Ji rushed over in a hurry and asked, "There's only one. Where's the other one?" He rushed over in a hurry because he could not locate He-san on the surveillance cameras. That coward fainted when he ran into the room and saw the two mirrors. I was afraid that he might influence the experience of the next visitor, so I dragged him to hide him under the bed. Fainted. Chen Ji also did not know how to respond. Safety's first. If this happens again in the future, inform me immediately. Yes, boss. After leaving Xu Wan to look after Gao Rushui, Chen Ji went into the room to pull He-san out from behind the bed. The young man was completely unconscious, like he was greatly traumatized. SHT, I have to bring him to somewhere open air first. Chen Ji carried He-san and ran toward the entrance of the haunted house. He peeled back the heavy drapes and kicked the gate open. Clear some space, please. Chen Ji placed He-san at the entrance of the haunted house, and he started to massage the young man and place ice packs over his forehead, trying to rouse him. This development had stunned the visitors that still had not left the park. Jesus Christ, what happened in there? Visit the haunted house until he fainted. This is first time I've seen something like this. He was scared until he fainted, right? So why would the online reviews say this place is not scary? FCK, I'm starting to have chills. Not long after that, Xu Wan came out carrying Gao Rushui. The woman was a complete contrast from the person who walked in. The new Gao Ruxiu's hair was a mess, her face was blanched, and her gait was weak. There were still tears drying on her face. This is a completely different person. What did she experience in there? But why should they be afraid? Aren't they forensic students? Xu Wan placed Gao Rushui on the steps and passed her a bottle of water. The woman was still recovering from the experience, as evidenced by her hands that were shaking as she held the bottle. Don't crowd around them, they need air. Chen Ji also felt a headache coming. It was normal for Gao Rushui to be shedding frightened tears, but what about this young man? Why would he suddenly faint? Why didn't he admit that he was easily scared? What was with men and their pride? The commotion caused more and more visitors to gather at the haunted house. This attracted the attention of the park manager, who rushed over on his electronic bike. Xiao Chen. What is going on here? Why is there a fainted visitor on the ground? Asked Uncle Xu as he jumped down from his bike and pushed through the crowd. I have no idea, maybe it's the heat. Even Chen Ji did not feel convinced by his answer. A hot flash in this kind of weather. Uncle Xu rushed over to pick up He-san and place him on his bike. Regardless, we have to send him to the medical room first. Several minutes later, perhaps it was the massage or the noise from the crowds, He-san started to rouse. His eyelashes fluttered and sat up from the bike. His eyes were bloodshot, and his mouth kept on mumbling, "Mirror, mirror. Son, keep calm. Look, doesn't he look possessed?" After a few more minutes in the sun, He-san finally became more like himself. He scratched the back of his head and blushed with shame when he realized the whole crowd was staring at him. Are you feeling better? Why did you faint inside the haunted house? Uncle Xu in the park uniform passed a bottle of water to He-san. I actually cannot recall for sure what had happened. I was so scared and ran into the first door that I saw. There was a bronze mirror on the wall, and I remembered someone calling my name, but I can't remember what happened after that, He-san said with a face filled with confusion. Perhaps it's something set up by the haunted house. There's a scenario related to a mirror inside the haunted house. Uncle Xu turned toward Chen Ji, who was not looking so good. When He-san mentioned that his fainting had to do with mirror, Chen Ji's heart skipped a beat. He was instantly reminded of the game from the previous night and how the thing inside the mirror had been stopped from escaping by the doll. From the look of it, the creature still had not left, hiding the mirrors of the haunted house. Boss, is this a new thing just added to the haunted house? How come I've not heard of it before? Xu Wan also wandered over, pulling the gaze of the crowd along with her. Chen Ji was caught in an awkward position. He could not just confess that there was an actual ghost living inside the haunted house, could he? If he did that, the haunted house would be forced into closure, but more than that, he would be dragged to the mental hospital. I guess you can say that. It's related to the short video I uploaded last night, but I don't recommend playing this game without professional guidance. Chen Ji patted He-san lightly on his shoulder. If you do not take my advice, you might end up in the same state as this young man. Alright, who still wishes to visit the haunted house? Don't worry, there are bound to be accidents in a haunted house, that's what makes it interesting, yes. Interesting my backside. A man fainted. It's a haunted house visit, so why should we put our lives on the line? He's right. I'll forget about my broken phone as long as you don't post any more weird SS videos in the middle of the night. Thanks, but no thanks. As Chen Ji extended the invitation, the crowd stepped away from him in unison. He laughed awkwardly. Why are you all acting like that? My haunted house is really not that scary. Bro, we have 2 forensic science students who deal with dead bodies every day here, one is in tears, and the other fainted. Now, you're telling us your haunted house is not scary. Who are you lying to? How can you lie without batting an eye? That's right, have some morals. The comments from the crowd stumped Chen Ji. Initially, when the haunted house was supposedly not scary, no one wanted to visit because, apparently, it was too boring. Now, when it was finally scary, it seemed to have overshot the effect he wanted. But you came from all over the country just to stand at the entrance and watch. Guts can be trained, an occasional scare here and there will be able to increase your heart rate, thus improving your blood circulation. Even if you give us money, we're not going into that place. And improve blood circulation some more, you might as well say your haunted house can cure cancer. The man who had his phone broken retorted before turning to leave. However, right then, a middle-aged uncle standing beside him suddenly raised his voice to say, "Boss, give me a ticket." His voice was firm like he had come to this decision after much contemplation. FCK, there really are thrill seekers everywhere. Uncle, don't be rash. Other haunted houses take your money, but his haunted house takes your life. Uncle, you've impressed me with your courage. Go on, don't worry, you can leave your wife and your daughter with me. The uncle looked to be over 40, and his head was balding. He walked out from the crowd and gave Chen Ji $10. "1 ticket please." "You're doing this alone." Even Chen Ji was impressed by this middle-aged man. He dared to do this after witnessing what had happened earlier. After taking the money, Chen Ji gave the uncle his ticket. He was about to go through his introductions when the uncle took the ticket and walked off in the other direction from the haunted house's gate. "Uncle, the door is right this way." "I know." The uncle did not turn back and continued to walk to a rather photogenic spot. He pulled out his phone to mess with the camera angle until he managed to encapsulate most of the haunted house building in the frame. He snapped 2 pictures before posting them to his Facebook. The weather today is perfect for a day out. I personally recommend this Western Jiujiang City's horror house. It scared the Jesus out of me when I visited the place, highly recommended. The crowd could not help but roll their eyes. All you did was stay at the entrance for about 20 minutes and purchase a ticket, you call that visiting the place? Before the crowd could say anything, the uncle already got likes and replies from his social circle. Xiao Li from Human Resources responded, "Brother Zhang, you're scared of even the common rat but you dared to visit a haunted house today. My man, nice job. This means that the haunted house isn't that scary if old Zhang dares to visit it," wicked grin, replied Wang Diyu. "Dinner is served, come home soon." Old Ball and Chain's response was relatively off-topic. Precious daughter, Wang Jing, laughed. "LOL, Dad, we're all very familiar with the type of courage you have, so stop with the hapless struggle." The balding uncle didn't mind the comments but replied with a mischievous smile, "Feel free to visit this place on your own. Since you all claim to be braver than I am, I'm sure none of you will be afraid to take up this challenge, right?" This series of actions had stunned the crowd. "Uncle, how cunning you are. To prove that you're not a scaredy cat, you're entrapping your very own wife and daughter." The man who had broken his phone stood beside the uncle and saw the whole process. Then, he rushed toward Chen Ji and demanded, "Give me a ticket as well." Chen Ji had no explanation to this development, but since he was operating a business, he could not say no to his customers. After passing the young man his ticket, he saw the young man operate his broken phone to snap a picture and upload it onto Instagram with the caption, "God, what did I do? I realize I'm easily scared, who can come to hold my hands as we challenge this haunted house together?" Reading through the many comments that appeared under his photo, the young man had a devilish smile on his face. "Give me 1 ticket too." "Me too." 50% off, you say? Then give me 2. There was no visitor inside the haunted house, but the tickets in Chen Ji's hands quickly disappeared. In just a few minutes, about half the stack was gone. The crowd slowly dispersed, and Chen Ji started to happily count the day's earning. Boss, the tickets we sold this morning are more than the total tickets we have sold in the whole month. Shu Wan squatted down beside Chen Ji, and the excitement in her eyes could not be suppressed. We merely got lucky today. To make sure we have a constant stream of visitors, we have to improve on our content first. Chen Ji placed the cash inside his pocket and turned to head back inside the haunted house. It was then that he realized his victims of the day, Gao Rushui and He-san, still hadn't left the scene. Are you two feeling any better? Chen Ji walked toward them with an offering of mineral water. After all, they were crucial to him having such good sales that day. Yes, thank you, and sorry for the trouble, He-san, who sat on the steps, uttered awkwardly. Beside him, the color still had not returned to Gao Ruxu's face yet. Her gaze wandered between Chen Ji and Shu Wan before she said, I have 2 questions I want to ask, may I? Sure. Chen Ji nodded readily. Number 1, inside the West House, I swore I saw this girl's face in the mirror, so how could she suddenly appear behind me? Gao Rushui intended to get to the bottom of the truth. She had a hard time coming to terms with that fact that she had been so scared that she cried. You think that's a normal mirror, but it's actually not. It's actually a triangular pillar with mirrors on each side, but the 2 other sides are normally hidden behind the wall. It can be moved with a slight push. The exit to the Mingun scenario is actually behind the mirror. Regarding the woman you saw in the mirror, it was merely a picture that was pasted at particular angle. Using lighting effects, the other mirror, and optical illusions, it creates the illusion that you're looking at a real person. Xiao Wan was actually hiding behind the mirror? The sound of footsteps you heard was merely a sound effect. Gao Rushui nodded after listening to Chen Ji's explanation. All right, the second question. She pointed at Shu Wan. This lady is obviously alive, but how come, looking at her, I have this feeling that I'm looking at a dead body? Due to her field of study, the time Gao Rushui spent in the company of dead bodies was far greater than the time she spent around living human beings. She was not good at social events, but that did not bother her much because she felt more comfortable in the presence of dead bodies after all. Our haunted house employs a special makeup technique, and that, combined with the unique environment of the haunted house, creates nothing more than an illusion in your mind. The mortician's makeup as well as Black Friday were something that he could not attempt to explain even if he tried to. Therefore, he answered the question broadly and quickly moved the conversation away. If there are no more questions, I'll need to get back to work. Thank you for visiting us today. After saying goodbye to the 2 students, Chen Ji ordered Shu Wan to go clear up the props in the Mingun scenario while he returned to the main control room alone. What really happened to He-san was known to Chen Ji alone. The creature in the mirror hadn't left and was still hiding inside the haunted house. Letting it stay will only create more problems for me in the future. This was his first time dealing with a nightmare mission, so he had not expected that it would have such complicated repercussions. After turning off the background music, Chen Ji pulled out the surveillance camera to focus on the few minutes after He-san entered the West House. After flipping through the videos captured from multiple angles, he soon discovered something. It was at 24 minutes and 11 seconds past 9 o'clock that He-san ran into the West House. He was running about like a headless chicken. At 24 minutes and 14 seconds, when his eyes fell on the bronze mirror, a very curious image appeared on screen. The originally frantic He-san became suspiciously calm after he saw the mirror. He stood before the mirror completely immobile. Chen Ji would have thought the video had stopped if not for the ticking time frame on screen. At 24 minutes and 17 seconds, He-san suddenly raised his left hand and started to walk slowly toward the mirror. It looked like someone or something was dragging him toward the mirror. At 24 minutes and 20 seconds, Shu Wan, wearing a wedding dress, ran into the room from the open door. By then, He-san's upper body was almost touching the mirror, and there was a flash of something in the mirror that was captured by the camera. Right after that, He-san fainted to the ground. It was Xiao Wan's arrival that interrupted the creature's plan. Chen Ji played the video on loop. Plenty of stuff happened in those 10 seconds. He rubbed his temples, but he could not come up with a good solution. Until I can come up with a more permanent solution, it looks like the only thing I can do now is cover up all the mirrors in this haunted house. Chen Ji wandered back to the props room to grab several black clothes before returning to the Mingun set. Boss, why are you here? Just leave the cleaning up to me. Shu Wan saw Chen Ji while she was picking up the paper mannequins and paper money to put them back into coffin. I came to inform you of something. Temporarily, stop using all the props and scares related to mirrors in the haunted house. Also, when you're working, make sure to stay away from mirrors. Chen Ji carried the black cloth as he helped Shu Wan close the fake coffin. Shu Wan was baffled by Chen Ji's orders, but she didn't ask. After fixing all the props in the main house, Chen Ji entered the west house alone. The white lantern cast its weak light into the room. He stood at the spot where He-san fainted and stared quietly at the bronze mirror. Someone lives inside the mirror. Could there really be another world inside the mirror? Chen Ji touched the icy surface of the glass and stared at his own reflection for a long time. He could not pinpoint it, but he felt like something was off. When I handed He-san the bottle of water earlier, he used his right hand to take it, which means that he's not left-handed. However, in the video, he raised his left hand. Why would he do something that is opposite of his usual habit? Was he taken control of by the thing in the mirror? Chen Ji placed his left hand on the mirror, which aligned perfectly with his mirrored right hand. After all, everything is inverted inside the mirror. After covering the mirror with a black cloth, Chen Ji pulled out the black phone. This is where it all started. The creature appeared because of this phone. Therefore, it makes sense that if I wish to vanquish it, I'll need the help of this phone. He opened the app with the haunted house icon and soon noticed some changes to the interface. The daily visitor number and monthly visitor number had each increased by 2. Under the window for unlockable scenarios, a trial mission had just become available. After clicking on it, the message said that after finishing the mission, the scenario that it corresponded to would be unlocked. The design of this game seems fair enough. Completing a mission will earn me a reward, and the level of the reward directly corresponds to the difficulty of the mission. If I wish to expand this place further and deal with the thing inside the mirror, I'll need to continue finishing these missions. He could only do one daily mission each day, so Chen Ji's eyes naturally wandered toward the trial mission. Murder by midnight. A dangerous psychotic patient wandered about a fallen apartment. Scissors and mallets as hands, he is just wandering outside of your room. Mission venue, Western Countryside's Ping'an Apartments. Mission requirement, reach the mission venue before 2300 hours today. Look for the party responsible for the murder and survive until dawn. Mission hints, he hides among the crowd like a wolf among a group of sheep. His kind exterior hides a sickened heart. Do you wish to accept this mission? Warning, trial missions are only available for 24 hours. If they are not accepted within these 24 hours, the scenario will never be unlocked. Chen Ji still had some reservations initially, but he decided to accept it after reading the last sentence. Let come what may, things are finally looking up for the haunted house. I can't give up on any opportunity that will make it better. After accepting the mission, he scrolled down. The haunted wheel of misfortune had been activated without him knowing. Chen Ji clicked on it out of curiosity, and a line of words appeared on screen. The decree of life and death is never the decision of man. Fortune and misfortune are only 1 inch apart. We have both spirit fruits to increase your lifespan as well as hatred-filled baleful specters. Activating the wheel after collecting the visitor's scream for the first time. You've been given a free spin for the first activation. A scream will be collected when it is over 70 decibels. After collecting 100 screams, they can be traded for a chance to spin the wheel of misfortune. 100 screams for 1 spin. Chen Ji frowned reading this detail. This wheel is horrible on so many levels. The condition for activating it is already so difficult, but the result is still randomized. If the result is a baleful specter, then wouldn't it have been a complete waste? Chen Ji looked at the box that said he had 1 spin left, and he felt like pressing it. This feeling was similar to when one saw a message appear on one's phone. It might just have been an advertisement, but one felt compelled to open it. I mean, what can possibly go wrong? Chen Ji told himself, and as his finger tapped the screen lightly, the wheel started to turn. As long as it's not a baleful specter, I'm fine with anything. Chen Ji looked at the screen with superhuman focus. The wheel gradually slowed until the needle stopped at one of the results. Lucky spin completed. Congratulations for having won a rare special item. Cursed love letter. Chance of winning, 3/1000. Her eyes exposed, cheeks white as ash. The moment she fell off the building, she became the taboo of the school. In red dancing shoes and a blood-dyed uniform, even her name became something that was only uttered in frantic whispers. People pretended that she didn't exist, until one day, someone started receiving her love letters again. Getting a baleful spirit on your first lucky spin, unlocked rare title, The Spectre's Favored. The Spectre's Favored, when you equip this title, there's a chance you might receive help from the specters. Looking at the information on screen, Chen Ji felt like his head was spinning. Cursed love letter. A 3/1000 chance of winning it. The Spectre's Favored. Before resolving the matter with the creature in the mirror, now I'm blessed with another one. I don't even know whether I should consider myself lucky or unlucky. He regretted cursing himself before activating the lucky spin. Chen Ji, get a grip of yourself. This is not the worst yet. Drawing a baleful specter doesn't mean it'll appear instantly. Perhaps there is still time to salvage this. Maybe I should go light an incense at the nearby temple. He pocketed his phone, and his fingers brushed up against something papery in his pocket. He lowered his head and was shocked to see a yellowed letter poking out of his pocket. With a bad feeling settling in his stomach, Chen Ji pulled out the letter carefully, and there was only a single, simple sentence written on it that was braided using hair. I like you? What the FCK? Please, tell me what you like about me, and I'll change from this moment on. The handwriting on the paper had a nice curve to it. It would look quite nice if not for the fact that it was braided from hair. Chen Ji stood in the West House, holding the letter in his hands. He mumbled to himself, who would have thought the first love letter I've ever received in my life would be something like this? Boss. What are you grumbling to yourself in here? Xiao Wan came in from behind him after she was done fixing all the stuff in the main house. It's nothing, I'm just thinking. If someone knows his life will end soon, is it right for him to give up on materialistic pursuit to focus on leaving some good deeds in this world? Chen Ji raised his head to look at Xiao Wan in dead man's makeup. For example, to do his best to help produce the human race's next generation. Chen Ji was obviously just rambling, but Xu Wan looked at him as if in deep thought, and her face turned serious with contemplation. Xiao Wan, don't tell me you're thinking about saying yes. Thanks, but I'm not ready yet. Then again, we've worked with each other for a long time already, and we do make a great team. I guess if you insist, I suppose I wouldn't have said no. For some reason, Chen Ji felt weirdly nervous. No, boss, it's not that. I'm just curious how you managed to have two shadows following you. Xu Wan pointed behind Chen Ji. Is this some new thing you've invented? Two shadows. Chen Ji whipped his head around and saw two shadows, one big and one small, encroaching upon him before finally melding into one. What the FCK? He yanked Xu Wan out of the haunted house immediately. Chen Ji finally relaxed when he felt the sun on his skin. He did not give Xu Wan any explanation as he collapsed onto the steps. Boss, you've been acting very out of sorts lately. Is it because of the financial pressure? Xu Wan sat down beside Chen Ji. Don't worry, I'm sure everything will be fine. By the way, what do you want to have for lunch? I'll go buy something for you. Listening to Xu Wan's words of comfort, Chen Ji also did not know how to answer. He forced a smile and said, I'll just have the same as you, but before you go out remember to remove your makeup, lest you scare the canteen workers. Understood. After Xu Wan left, Chen Ji pulled out the love letter again. I saw the two shadows joining together with my own eyes. If this is a sign that I've been haunted by the specter, does it mean that it's hiding in my shadow? Chen Ji looked at his shadow unblinkingly. With the specter's favored title, I have a chance to earn the aid from the specters, so in a way, winning a baleful specter might not be as bad as I thought. At least that was what Chen Ji told himself on the surface. He knew internally, the reason a baleful specter was called a baleful specter was because they died with great anguish. They radiated sin and curses. If he was slightly careless, he might easily end up dead in a ditch somewhere. After lunch, Chen Ji stood in front of the haunted house, handing out flyers. There were quite a number of park visitors, but none wanted to enter the haunted house. Bored out of his mind, Chen Ji opened his video sharing app page and realized there had been a few new private messages. Deleting the trolls and advertisement, Chen Ji personally replied the remaining messages. Soon, he came across a message from He-san. The honest-looking young man surreptitiously came to contact Chen Ji, telling him his school's forum had been exploding. After they found out that his haunted house had played such a big prank on the beauty of their course, many students had stated the desire to level the haunted house. Someone had started a thread to form the warring party, and it had more than a handful of volunteers already. It's nice to be young, Chen Ji commented with upturned lips. In his mind, however, there was already a vision of hormonal youths quivering in a group trapped inside his haunted house. After completing the trial mission, I'll have them try it out to see how scary the one-star scenario really is. The thought of the trial mission made Chen Ji turn serious. He only had a one-time chance to complete this mission. If he failed, the chance of unlocking that scenario would forever be lost. He looked through the phone to memorize all the available information. Knowing one's enemy is winning half the battle. Therefore, the first thing Chen Ji did after confirming the mission venue was to look up everything he could about the place on the internet. Jiujiang City Western Countryside's Ping and Apartments. Keying in the name of the location came up with nothing initially. After flipping through the front few pages, Chen Ji finally found something related to this apartment listed on a second-hand house sale website. It was a complaint saying that the seller had the intention of obscuring the truth. In reality, this apartment was a literal haunted house. After peeling off the fresh coat of paint, there were signs of dried blood, and every night, the apartment would be filled with the disgusting smell of decay. No one answered the complaint, and it was soon swamped by other more interesting threads. Chen Ji looked at the time of posting, and it was 9 months ago. Staying overnight at a haunted house and having to look for a hidden murderer. Sigh, this is a bit harder than I thought. Chen Ji had studied toy design. He was a complete amateur when it came investigation and self-defense. The hard part is not staying at the haunted house, but what if the murderer is just living next door to me and jumps at me at night? At 4:30 p.m., Chen Ji stood alone in the haunted house's props room. He studied the room full of items as if deep in thought. What do you need to prepare to spend a night with a murderer? Identity card, phone, charger, lighter, penknife, multi-uses hammer, right, mustn't forget this doll as well. Chen Ji shoved the doll that appeared before the mirror the previous night into his bag, and after confirming he had everything he needed, he pulled the zipper of the bag closed and left the room. Xiao Wan, you can get off work early today? Remember to lock the door when you leave. I have something to attend to do, so I'll go first. Boss, it's only 5 p.m. Are you going on a trip or something? I've left the key on the table in the props room, see you tomorrow morning. Noticing Chen Ji's attempt at changing the subject, Xiao Wan helplessly replied, okay. However, as Chen Ji turned around, the girl dropped the haunted house flyers and shot toward the props room in a trail of smoke. This girl, the evening wind ruffled the flyers that were left on the table. Chen Ji shook his head and picked up a pebble to place over them as he sighed. Hopefully she won't be seeing me on the morning news. Underneath his calm surface, Chen Ji's heart was a chaotic mess. The nightmare mission from the night before had opened a whole new world to him and made him realize there was a certain level of danger to the missions dispensed by the Black Phone. Trial mission has to be more difficult than daily mission. I have to be more careful tonight. Before the night fell, Chen Ji rode his bicycle to head toward Ping'an Apartments. The mission information only gave the name of the location. To locate the place, Chen Ji used Google Maps and the information from the online complaint released 9 months ago. Even so, he still exhausted 2 hours before he reached his destination. Are there even people who want to live a place that is so barren and isolated? The road leading to the apartment building was winding and overgrown with wild bushes. There was a noticeable lack of street lighting, and through the tree branches, Chen Ji could catch glimpses of a gray-colored building. On the way there, Chen Ji asked as many people as he could, but most of them hadn't heard of Ping'an Apartments. In the end, it was a senior who was about 60 years old that pointed him down the correct road and added a little friendly advice. He told Chen Ji that the place was haunted and cursed, so most would give it a wide berth even in daylight. Chen Ji did not know how to answer. If not for the sake of the Black Phone's mission, who would voluntarily go spend a night at a place like that? It's now 6:50 p.m. and the mission states that I have to be there by 11 p.m. This means that I still have time to have a quick look around. Following the winding road, Chen Ji entered deep into the forest. After traveling for quite some time, he finally saw the legendary cursed house. The yard was surrounded by a tall gray wall, and there was only one exit. Even though the gate that opened on both sides was rusty with age, there was a brand new lock on it. Weird, the lock is so new, but the gate looks old. But wait, what's this? There was a piece of white paper stuck to the iron bars of the gate. Chen Ji assumed it was a flyer, but when he pointed his flashlight at it, he realized it was a missing person's notice. Zhang Qing, female, 27 years old, 157 centimeters tall, on the thin side. There is a beauty mark beneath her right eye. She likes to wear red clothes. If you have any information, please contact Mr. Wang. Monetary rewards will be provided. The notice came with this Mr. Wang's contact number and address. The thing that caught Chen Ji's attention was that the address listed on the notice was the address of this cursed apartment. This sure is weird. Chen Ji's ghost sense was tingling. He pulled out his phone to snap a picture of the notice before entering the compound. The place was bigger than he had expected. The main building had 3 floors, and there were 2 buildings that looked like a storeroom and a water pump room next to it. Based on the peeling of its paint, I believe this place is at least 20 to 30 years old already. However, the place was not as unkempt as one might have assumed it to be. The place was clean, there was no litter, and even the lawn was carefully mown. After he placed his bicycle in the lawn, Chen Ji walked into the main building with his backpack. Hello, is anyone there? The long corridor was shadowy. About 10 seconds later, the door closest to the stairs opened up a sliver. Good afternoon. Chen Ji walked toward the door, but the person behind it did not seem particularly hospitable since the door stopped after opening just a sliver. The lights in the room were not on, and Chen Ji could just about make out the shape of a woman behind the door. Her eyes were bloodshot, like she was fond of sleeping late. It made her look extremely tired. I wish to ask how much it will cost me to spend a night here, Chen Ji said in a tone that was as kind and soft as he could. However, to his bafflement, the only answer he got was a giggle, and the door slammed in his face. Huh. Before he understood what just happened, he heard footsteps coming from the second floor. The only voice-activated light that was installed at the corner of the corridor lit up, and a limping middle-aged man was coming down. He seemed to have overheard Chen Ji because the first thing he said was, "You want to stay at my place? How long do you plan to stay?" "You're the landlord." Chen Ji walked over. "I just wish to stay for one night." "Just one night?" The limping man gave Chen Ji a once-over like he was trying to read his mind. "Fine, give me your ID and the payment is made at the second floor." Chen Ji was about to follow the man upstairs when a loud sound came from outside. It sounded like someone had swung the iron gate open. Hearing this, the limping man frowned and his features twisted with displeasure. He stopped moving, and Chen Ji had no choice but to wait as well. Not long after that, in walked another middle-aged man who looked awfully tired. He was wearing old, tattered clothes and was holding a stack of papers in his hand. "Wang Qi, how many times I've told you, your girlfriend is not here. If you insist on being this stubborn, I'll have to call the police." The limping man stood in the middle of the stairs to block the path. The other man ignored him and continued upstairs with his head lowered. "Hey, I'm talking to you." The limping man kicked, causing the unprepared middle-aged man to knock into the wall. The stack of papers slipped from his hands and fluttered all over the staircase. One of them happened to land beside Chen Ji's feet. "It's the same as the missing persons notice that I saw outside," Chen Ji thought to himself as he narrowed his eyes. He silently picked it up before continuing to follow the drama that was happening before him. The middle-aged man did not retaliate against the limping man's attack. He crawled up slowly from the ground and carried on to wordlessly pick up the notices that littered the ground. He reminded Chen Ji of a lumbering, lifeless zombie. "Don't mind him, the man's crazy." The limping man waved at Chen Ji, ushering him to come upstairs. It seemed like he had given up on the middle-aged man. Crazy. When Chen Ji passed the middle-aged man, he surreptitiously glanced at him. The mission information did mention a psycho, so could this be him? Chen Ji's first impression of Wang Qi was weary, torpid, and weak. As they brushed past each other, Chen Ji handed the other man back the notice he had picked up earlier, and Wang Qi thanked him with a wavering voice. This was the first time Chen Ji had heard the man speak. It sounded gravelly, which gave Chen Ji some trouble in understanding him. "You're welcome," Chen Ji responded with a smile before he turned to follow the limping man up the stairs. The second floor was even more dilapidated than the first floor. The place was dark and humid, the corners were filled with unclean spider webs, and the walls looked like they had been slashed with knives. The limping man led Chen Ji to the very end of the long corridor. He opened the last room before coming out with a long chain of keys. "One night is $50, take a pick of any room you like on this floor." $50. That's too expensive. My apartment is the only place to stay within several kilometers, you should be thankful I only charge you 50. When the man was talking, his eyes kept unconsciously moving to look behind him like he was checking out something. "Fine, but why must I stay on the second floor? Is the room on first or third floor not available? Why do you have no many damn questions? They're off the limits, that's why." The limping man grabbed the 50 away from Chen Ji and shoved a random key in his hand. "The room number is written on the key, go look for it yourself." Then, he rushed back into the room. The moment the door closed, Chen Ji could hear the muffled croak of an old man coming from inside the room, like the sound one would make when one had food stuck in one's throat. Frowning with suspicion, Chen Ji placed his palm on the door, saying, "Wait a minute." "What now?" the limping man asked with annoyance. Chen Ji glanced through the slight opening of the door. The space within looked small. Other than the limping man that stood at the door, there was an old man reclining in a wheelchair that was facing away from the door. He was probably the source of the noise Chen Ji heard earlier. "I'm rather thirsty, does your establishment provide a vending machine or things like that?" "No." "Man, is this how you treat your customer?" The door slammed in his face, leaving Chen Ji in the corridor with a heavier suspicion brewing in his heart. For a normal apartment building, the reception is normally at the front door, but for this building, the reception is not only on the second floor but at the very end of the second floor corridor. Looking at the key in his hand, many questions appeared in his mind. Why are the first and third floors off limits? And who is the old man living with the landlord? The number 208 was written on the key, and coincidentally enough, the room was just next to the landlord's. Regardless, let me go put down my stuff first. After 2 hours of traveling, Chenji was indeed more than a bit tired. As he opened the door, the smell of mildew hit him in the nose. The room had probably been vacant for a long time because the place was covered with dust, and the bed was overgrown with some mysterious-looking fungus. It felt strange under Chenji's touch. Is this bed even usable? Before Chenji even placed his backpack down, he heard a loud crash coming from next door. It sounded like a plate had fallen and shattered. Chenji closed the door and stuck his ear to the wall, trying to eavesdrop. Soon enough, the sound of the limping man cursing came. In his anger, he let out several foreign curses, and based on his accent, the man sounded like he was not a local. The old man mumbled weakly in reply. The limping man continued scolding for several minutes before he stopped, but what happened next confused Chenji. The volume of the television was increased. What's going on? What is he doing? Why did he increase the television's volume? Chenji tried to listen for more clues, but all he could hear was the television. He soon gave up. So be it. In any case, I should be more worried about myself. I doubt I'll be able to get any sleep tonight. Chenji placed his backpack on the table and took out the penknife, placing it in his pocket. The online complaint mentioned the existence of blood stains behind the paint and the presence of a horrible smell at night. However, I've searched all the information available on Pingan Apartments online, and there was no mention of any murders that happened here. Then again, there had to be some kind of secret hidden at Pingan Apartments for it to have been selected as the mission venue by the black phone. He pulled out the multi-purpose hammer to knock and inspect every corner of the room. He came up with nothing. This was a very normal guest room. Other than the sorry state it was in, there was nothing out of ordinary about it. Since the landlord only allowed me to pick a room on the second floor, this means that the rooms on the second floor are mostly fine, or else he wouldn't have opened it up for rent. Therefore, to get to the bottom of this, I have to go take a look on the first or third floor. The trial mission was supposed to start at 11 p.m. There were still 3 hours until then. Chenji did not want to waste time. He put the hammer away and slunk toward the door. With his hand on the doorknob, he pushed it open. However, he stopped halfway. His palm started to sweat, and a chill ran down his spine. The limping man was standing just outside his door, God only knew how long for. The man also did not expect that Chenji would suddenly open the door. Both parties on either side of the door were equally shocked. Landlord, why are you standing at my door? Chenji narrowed his eyes at the man. The more time he spent with the limping man, the uneasier he felt. Didn't you say you were thirsty? I came to give you this. The limping man placed the warm water bottle in his hands by Chenji's door, and his expression was as unnatural as it could be. Thank you. Chenji did not point out how weird he was acting and pulled the bottle into the room. Is there anything else? No, that's all. Do rest early. The limping man glanced inside the room and added as if to himself, the corridors are not fitted with lights, so they're very dark at night. You'd better stay in your room after the sun sets. He turned to leave. Chenji sighed in relief when the door next to him closed. This landlord is easily angered and socially inept. Even though he has a limp, that doesn't mean that he's physically weak. He managed to shove the man earlier to the ground with just one kick. If anything, he should be quite powerful. Chenji wasn't a particularly good sleuth. The only thing he could do was try to fit the situation at the apartments into the plot of all the past murder mysteries he had seen. Born with a disability might have caused him to be bullied from a young age, and that corrupted his innocence. That could easily evolve into a mental sickness. FCK, it sounds like he's the perfect candidate for a crazed murderer. Chenji put the bottle away, and a pressing question came into his mind. If the landlord is the murderer, then doesn't this mean I'm going to have to spend the whole night next to a murderer? This thought made Chenji's skin crawl. Who knew, the man might spend the whole night standing outside his door, waiting to entrap him. To make matters worse, since he was the landlord, he had access to the space keys, which enable him to enter any room as he wished. I shouldn't get ahead of myself. The landlord is suspicious, but that doesn't mean he's really the murderer. Chenji scratched his head and said to himself, perhaps I should talk to some of the tenants for more details. Since Chenji arrived at the apartment, he had seen 4 different individuals: the woman hiding behind the door, Wang Qi, the person who pasted those missing person notices all over the place, the recalcitrant landlord, and the old man in the wheelchair. The old man stays with the landlord, so speaking to him is out of the question. The lady on the first floor weirds me out, so the only remaining candidate is Wang Qi. He should know some things about this apartment. Chen Ji placed the bottle in the room, locked the door behind him and went downstairs. The voice-activated light came on, giving Chen Ji enough light to see Wang Qi hugging the stack of notices, walking down the corridor. He slipped a notice under each door, regardless of whether they were occupied or not. This naturally attracted Chen Ji's attention. Normally, missing person notices were posted at places with high traffic, but this man personally focused on these apartments, which seemed quite deserted. Chen Ji followed behind Wang Qi quietly. It was not until Wang Qi finished slipping the last notice under the door that he said, "Brother, I can understand your feeling of having a loved one vanish, but you should stay strong and not do this kind of meaningless action to torture yourself." Wang Qi slowly turned around up hearing Chen Ji's voice. His clouded pupils seemed unable to find a point to focus on. Understand. None of you will ever understand how I feel, nor have I asked for your understanding. Chen Ji did not waste time going down this rabbit hole with him. He grabbed his phone and searched for the police report he made when his parents disappeared several months ago. I'm not lying to you. My parents suddenly disappeared half a year ago, and at the beginning, I was feeling down in the dumps, too. Looking at the picture saved in the phone, Wang Qi was silent for a long time before he said, I empathize with your situation, but our circumstances are different. My fiancé will return, I can feel that she hasn't gone far. Do you mind telling me your story? Considering we're somewhat in the same boat, perhaps I can help you, Chen Ji said. Weirdly enough, he found himself meaning what he said. Wang Qi hesitated. Perhaps recalling that Chen Ji had helped him pick up his notice earlier, his gaze that fell on Chen Ji softened. Thank you, but you won't be able to help me. You're a nice young man, so listen to my advice, run away while you still can. Don't try to spend a night here. I've already paid. You'll have to give me a more convincing reason if you want me to pack up and leave. Chen Ji's purpose there was to complete the trial mission. If he surrendered, he would lose the opportunity to unlock the murder by midnight scenario forever. Is your life more important or your money? Wang Qi looked about them, and after making sure there was no peeping eyes, he lowered his voice to say, everyone here knows there have been murders in this building before. I've heard a thing or two about that, but I failed to find any information on it on the internet. I suspect that's merely a rumor, Chen Ji replied. Previously, this building was called Vuan Apartments. It was after the incident that the name changed to Ping'an Apartments. The murders were big news at the time, and until now, they haven't been solved. The will of the dead hasn't been appeased, so they appear at their place of death every day at midnight, Wang Qi said. It sounded like he really believed it. You still believe ghost stories like that at an age like ours? Chen Ji smiled awkwardly. Internally, he was incredibly nervous because he knew better than anyone how real the other world was. If possible, he really did not want to have any more encounters with these spirits. Initially, I did not believe it either, that is until the day my fiancé disappeared around this area. Wang Qi pulled on his hair out of frustration, his fatigue plain as day. Why would your fiancé come to a place like this in the first place? Chen Ji was intrigued. The thing that happened to this Wang Qi's fiancé was curiously similar to what happened to his parents. To be honest, I don't really know. In fact, I had not even heard of this apartment before her disappearance. I got the place's name from the police. They told me it was at this place that all clues were lost. Wang Qi's hands relaxed, and several strands of hair hung listlessly between his fingers. I've run out of ideas, and that's why I moved in here. Then, have you discovered anything? Wang Qi's lips fell open, but before he could say anything, he suddenly stopped himself. Instead, he reached into his pocket to pull out his phone to type something on it. My fiancé has been kidnapped by the people who live here. Chen Ji was dumbfounded reading the typed message. He had not expected this development. Brother, a kidnapping and a disappearance are two very different things. Wang Qi shushed Chen Ji, telling him to be quiet. He turned his back toward the corridor and flipped his phone over to show Chen Ji. Chen Ji saw the messages in the phone inbox, and his eyes slowly widened with shock. There was a message from Wang Qi's fiancé in his phone. The content was simple, it only had 2 words: save me. However, the most spine-chilling discovery was the message was sent at 2 a.m. last night. Someone who should have disappeared sent you a SOS message in the middle of the night. After the initial shock, Chen Ji quickly calmed down. Then, why didn't you go to the police with this message? Obviously, your fiancé is still alive. You might not believe me when I tell you this, but I receive this message from my fiancé every night after midnight. The content is always the same, but the key point is every time after I wake up, the message will have miraculously disappeared like it never really happened. Wang Qi pointed at his bloodshot eyes. To preserve this message, I haven't closed my eyes for 24 hours already. The message will disappear once you fall asleep. This was the first time Chen Ji had heard something as curious as that. I know you think I'm crazy, but everything I've said is the truth. Wang Qi leaned against the wall for support as he pocketed his phone. More inexplicable things have happened to me. For example, my fiancé stuff curiously appears in my room without warning. It's like she's reminding me to go look for her. When Wang Qi said the last sentence, Chen Ji's eyelids twitched. Based on his experience from the past few days, Wang Qi's fiancé had not disappeared but befallen an accident and transformed into a ghost. She was haunting Wang Qi. That was the only logical explanation, provided the man had not been lying to him. My fiancé disappeared around this apartment building, and my life has been changed by this apartment building. Listen to me, this place is cursed. It's the home of many evil ghosts and specters. Misfortune befalls those who get too close, so leave when you still can. It seemed that Wang Qi had not uttered so many words at one go in a very long time, for his face was stark white as if the conversation had taken a great toll out on him. From a stranger's perspective, Wang Qi might have appeared to be too insistent in chasing the newcomer away. Therefore, Chen Ji did not promise the man anything. If anything, after listening to Wang Qi's story, he had a sneaking suspicion that the man was hiding something. I've told you everything I know, and there's still time to leave. When the clock strikes 12, the apartment will turn into something else. After saying that, Wang Qi brushed the dust away from his clothes and turned to leave. It was not until Wang Qi's shadow disappeared among the darkness of the night that Chen Ji came to. His original intention was to obtain more information from the tenants about the building, but now, he ended up with more question than answers. That man sure is a curious character, but I can't tell whether he's crazy or not. Recalling Wang Qi's pair of cloudy eyes that had not focused once throughout their conversation, Chen Ji felt uncomfortable. The pain and tiredness in the man's eyes could not be faked. But it does seem like he loves his fiancée dearly. As Chen Ji went back to his room, he paused when he passed the woman's room on the first floor. He hesitated before knocking on the room. Hey, fresh blood. The woman's room door remained unmoved, but to Chen Ji's surprise, the door to the room directly opposite from hers fell open. A lanky man was leaning against the open door. He looked to be in his 30s, and the man's appearance was very unkempt. His beard was almost joined to his hair, and the back of his hand had a tattoo of a peony. And you are? Chen Ji turned around with alarm. The man who was spreading the missing person notice around is not even a tenant of this building. There's something wrong about him up here. The thin man pointed at his temple. Don't believe a word out that comes out of his mouth, and try not to get too close to him. It was the first time Chen Ji had seen this man, and even though the man's appearance left much to be desired, the man's mannerisms were the most normal of all the characters he had met at the apartment. The man's actions sure are weird, but perhaps that is because he was too devastated from the loss of his fiancée. Did he tell you his fiancée disappeared around this apartment? Yes. Did he tell you he received that information from the police and that's why he has been searching for her here? Yes. The man chuckled mirthlessly before saying, I've lived here for 9 months already, and I've seen no trace of the police coming here. The madman is lying to you. I'm sure you don't believe his talk of ghosts, right? He pulled out a cigarette to dangle on his lips. There are no ghosts in this world. At most, it's someone pretending to be a ghost. In any case, it's getting late, so you'd better return to your room. Chen Ji thanked the man and turned to leave. As he wandered up the steps, he thought to himself, obviously, one of them is lying, but which is it? Lost in his thoughts, Chen Ji did not realize he had walked up to the 3rd floor. The faded number was printed on the corner of the wall, and the voice-activated light above his head flickered on and off. Chen Ji looked down the long corridor and realized this whole floor was in a state of complete disrepair. The floor was thick with grime, and there were signs of burning everywhere. The coating of the wall was peeling off like skin, and underneath it were lines that looked like thick cuts. Why have they left the 3rd floor unfixed? Not enough budget, or is there a more sinister reason? The voice-activated light soon went off, and Chen Ji was submerged in a world of darkness. Due to his work at the haunted house, Chen Ji was used to working in the darkness. The sudden blindness did not unhinge him. He pulled out his phone and was about to turn the flashlight on when he spotted a shadow dash past the darkened corridor. Who's there? The flashlight on the phone lit up the 3rd floor, but the shadow was nowhere to be seen. Chen Ji was about to investigate further when he heard footsteps coming up from further down the stairs. It's the landlord. If he was spotted by the easily irked landlord loitering on 3rd floor, he might get chased off the premises. Chen Ji thought about it, pocketed his phone, and stealthily retreated down to the 2nd floor. When he turned the corner on the stairwell, Chen Ji saw a rotund and short man coming out of a room on the second floor, holding a basin. The man was humming a happy tune, but when he saw Chen Ji, his face fell and he immediately ran away from the scene. What is the meaning of that? Do I look that scary? After returning to his room, Chen Ji lay in bed, hugging his backpack. It feels like there's no normal individual in this apartment, every single one of them could be the party responsible for the murders. When those words rolled off his tongue, Chen Ji suddenly sat up in bed. Wait a minute, the mission told me to find the party responsible for the murders, but the term party can be both singular and plural. In that case, could there be more than one murderer? After all, if there is more than one murder, the chances of multiple murderers will drastically increase. I need to get more information on that case from years ago. Chen Ji pulled out his phone. His conversation with Wang Qi was not for nothing. He now had the important information that before it was called Ping'an Apartments, this place was called Fuan Apartments. He keyed in Jiuzhang Fuan Apartments in the search box, and several pages later, numerous spine-chilling headlines jumped out at him. A family of 4 brutally murdered. The murderer has disappeared into thin air. Accident or homicide? The truth of the fire that razed Fuan Apartments. Case within a case, bodies hidden inside the building unearthed. Reading through the information on Fuan Apartments, Chen Ji felt his skin chilled. This was not fiction, they happened in real life, and he was currently living at the crime scene. 5 years ago, a neighbor saw the smog rising from Fuan Apartments, so he called the fire brigade. The firefighters soon put out the fire and started to investigate the source of the fire as well as gauge the extent of damage. Initially, they thought this was going to be another accidental fire case, but as the investigation continued, more curious evidence started to surface. The cement walls were cracked, the surface of cracked window was small, and the smog blackened the ceiling. These were all signs that the temperature of the fire was high, and it spread very fast. There were several possible initial locations found at the building, and they were all far apart from each other, quintessential of an arson case. Therefore, the nature of the investigation changed. After the police stepped in, they soon discovered 4 burnt bodies among the ruin of the fire. They believed these were the bodies of the family of 4 who operated the rental apartment. This case created quite a buzz at the time. The police tried their best to solve the case, but the fire had destroyed most of the evidence. They combed the place but could not locate the evidence of a 5th person, much less catch the culprit. The apartment was sealed for a whole year, after which ownership of the estate was passed on to the owner's father, and it was then that Fuan Apartments changed to Ping'an Apartments. The family of 4 was burned to the death, and the culprit still hasn't been caught. No wonder people say this place is haunted. After knowing more about the case, Chen Ji felt slightly more grounded because at least he knew what he was dealing with. A curious detail on the report stuck out at him. The articles all confirmed that at the time of passing, the owner was already 41 years old. The apartment was later passed on to his father, and theoretically and logically speaking, the real current owner of this place should be in his 60s or 70s already. There was only one person who fit the criteria, the old man sharing the room with the landlord. This is weird. According to the news articles, the owner should be an old man, but the landlord who received me is at most middle-aged. Chen Ji stood up to press his ear to the wall. The television on the other side of the wall was still blaring. Currently, it was playing some random commercial. Normally, wouldn't the viewer switch the channel during commercials? But they've been watching the commercials for several minutes already. Chen Ji tried to lean closer into the wall. Perhaps, I've missed something. He cleared his mind and tried to rearrange all the clues he had so far. After I entered the room, I heard the sound of a plate shattering next door. Then, the landlord started to curse and scold the old man. It continued until the volume of the television was raised. Since the old man was incapacitated, it had to be the landlord who increased the television volume, but the question is, why? Chen Ji narrowed his eyes as a speculation appeared in his mind. Is the landlord ill-treating the old man? The television noise is to cover up the sound of assault. The more he thought about it, the more possible it sounded in his mind. The shattering plate occurred the moment I moved in. Isn't that too much of a coincidence? Could that have been an SOS signal from the old man? After all, it was merely a broken plate. There's no reason for the landlord to get so angered. Perhaps he was afraid that the sound might have attracted my unwanted attention. But why should he be afraid? And why would the old man call for help? Suddenly, another detail that seemed unimportant to Chen Ji earlier entered in his mind. When the landlord was scolding the old man, he let slip several foreign curses. The family that passed away were all locals, but this landlord is not from Jiuzhang. He shouldn't be blood related to the old man or his family. Normally speaking, the man wouldn't leave his assets to be taken care of by a stranger unless the limping man has taken over this place and is holding the old man captive. If that's really the case, either he's a caretaker who got too greedy or he's the actual murderer. Either way, it did not bode well for Chen Ji. Chen Ji's fists tightened. That also explains why he was eavesdropping at my door earlier. He wanted to find out how much I've learned. Chen Ji's forehead was sweaty from all the thinking. After all, he wasn't a real detective, all he had were references to plots that he had seen on television before. What should I do now? Rush directly into the room next door to whack the landlord until he faints. No, that's too rash. If my speculation is wrong, that'll land me in hot water. With the mallet in his hand and the penknife stuck in his pocket, Chen Ji paced around the room. Give the landlord a test to confirm his identity. No, that's too risky. What if I tip my hand too soon? After all, he might have other accomplices, and I'm here all alone. If I'm targeted, my life will be in danger. Furthermore, I don't really have any real proof, everything is just speculation. Also, I'm pretty sure the main purpose I'm here is to find the murderer from 4 years ago, so maybe I should focus on that instead. Chen Ji was caught in a conundrum. Suddenly, the television next door was switched off and the place became eerily quiet. What's going on? He opened the door slightly and lowered himself to the ground. He peeked out at the door next to him. There was no light coming out from underneath the door. Sleeping at 8 p.m. Chen Ji crawled to the landlord's room door holding the mallet. In an out-of-body moment, he realized how suspicious he must have looked then. He turned around to make sure no one was watching him before pocketing the mallet and crawling back to his room. Then again, my speculation might not be 100% accurate, if only I had a professional to help me with the analysis. Chen Ji lay in bed and pulled out his phone. In his contact list, other than Xu Wan, he had not spoken to many of the others before. Jesus Christ, I sure am loyal. Chen Ji thought about it. Among the people that he knew, the only person who was slightly related to investigation was the young man who had fainted inside his haunted house, He-san. In any case, a medical student should be better at logic and analysis than I am. He entered the video sharing app and realized he had about 20 private messages. He clicked open a random one and saw it was a personal message from a studio that was based on the website. The person expressed interest in having him join the team. Is this person some kind of talent scout? Chen Ji did not have time to deal with that right then. He scrolled through the many messages to look for He-san's ID and tossed the invitation out of his mind. However, several minutes later, the studio sent him another message. You there? We've seen your video, it has plenty of potential. We were wondering if you would like to cooperate with us. We can contact the top streamers of our platform on your behalf to help increase your popularity and exposure. Doing this alone is going to be very difficult. After all, most streamers on the net rely on teams and networking. This is a very good offer, so do consider it. You there? The endless pop-ups annoyed Chen Ji. He was busy trying to survive a night in the apartment that housed a murderer who had killed 4 individuals in cold blood 4 years ago, and these people were busy trying to sell him their service. He finally replied, AFK. Young man, you sure are funny. Give our studio serious consideration. You don't need to do anything beyond adding our studio's logo to your videos. In return, we will provide you with better exposure to help you gain viewership. I'm sorry, but I'm currently not interested in something like that. Chen Ji felt his reply was polite already. If this was someone else, they probably would have cursed the person out before blacklisting the studio. Your short video has the possibility to go viral, but you have to understand that it is just a possibility. A platform like this has an average of 1 million uploads each day, and you're just one of the more lucky ones. Nowadays, people are in for fast food entertainment, they don't have the patience to wait. Every moment, there are fresh and more exciting things to pull their attention away. If you don't carefully manage your business, your video will soon be submerged by a sea of fresh attractions. Talk about it later, I'm currently busy with something important. Chen Ji finally found He-san's ID. What is more important than earning money? If you are still hesitating, perhaps we can have some other form of cooperation. For example, we are more than willing to offer good money to buy your content and video shooting technique. Chen Ji was irked, so he blacklisted the individual and messaged He-san. To his surprise, He-san replied within a few seconds. Boss, I've been waiting for you to release a new video. Wait a minute, I have a more important question to ask you. After getting He-san's phone number, he called the young man and explained the whole situation to him in a whispered tone. Like and subscribe.